I'm back at the Soundation homepage, and that's just to show you that you can launch the studio from a number of different places. If you start getting deep into your account or in the community or whatever, you always can just go to the top toolbar here and click on Studio, and it will launch the studio for us like so. Let's start by going into File and creating a new song. And after creating that new song, let's save it right away. And I think we'll just call this something like Song 1. Remember to always save inside of Soundation. A lot of the newer modern digital audio workstations will have auto recover features. Soundation doesn't have that. So if, for example, your internet connection gets reset or for whatever reason something crashes the browser, which will happen quite frequently, you want to make sure that you have a saved file from, the last 5 minutes or so. So if you have to redo some work, it's not too much. That can be one of those things that makes you never want to open up a project again. And I think that's happened to all of us at some point in our lives. So we're here with a blank slate, which is great. And what we're going to be covering here are the transport controls, or really this bottom center menu here. Let's begin by adding in an audio channel. And to do that, I'll just click this plus button. And now all we need to do is drop something in here. So let's go into our browser and let's find something. Let's find like a full beat if we can. Let's see, what do we have in here? Here's something that says Beat Electro House. I can preview it. All right, that will work totally fine. So to add this to our audio channel, all we have to do is drag and drop. Now, what we can't do is drag into a random location and drop it. There needs to be an audio channel. So I'll drag it, pull it up to the audio channel, drop it, and you can see that it's loaded it in like so. Now notice, we are snapping perfectly to the grid at this point. This is taking up 2 bars. And so if I wanted to, I could take this file and I could loop it out by clicking and dragging at the top forever. And it's always going to play very nicely. Right? Absolutely seamless. And why is that? Why is this going to play so nicely and keep everything aligned to the grid like so? That has to do with the BPM we set down here. So we can set our BPM, and it's probably the first thing I would do when making a track based on whatever we're going for. And normally you're going to see a range, especially with electronic music, probably between like 70, sometimes maybe as low as 65. And it can go as high as like 180, 190, 200. Depending on the genre you're going for, you can always search that on the internet. There are also a lot of programs out there that will analyze BPM of some of your favorite songs. So if you know you're going for something in particular, you can research that from the start and just set it before you begin your project. Now, what we have here in Soundation are our clips are actually arranged by BPM. So you can see for electronica, they've given us 125 and 130. And I want you to notice that for the first audio clip I drag in, and let's just see if we can find something here. Doesn't really matter too much. Here's something called Synth Dark. Okay, that's fine. I can click, I can drag this, and watch what happens to the BPM at the bottom. It automatically changes to 130. So for the first clip you drop in, that is going to set the BPM of the project. And again, if I drag this in, you can see it's lining up perfectly with the grid there. Now, what happens if I change this BPM? So let's say I change this to 125. Watch these numbers. I double click, type in 125, and uh-oh, suddenly we're not on the grid anymore. And that could be a bit of a problem. So how will I know this is a problem? Well, what I can do is I can turn on the metronome here, or as some of you might know this, the click track. So if I mute this out, I go back to the beginning and I click play. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's turn this guy way down and listen to the click against this loop. And I'll actually zoom this out and drag this out a little bit so we can really hear it. You can hear the farther we're going, the more out of time it's becoming. And if you don't hear that right away, Don't worry, you'll notice the difference when I change this to 130, and now that it's playing in time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can hear those chord changes. Boom, 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 right on the downbeat, like so. Okay, so setting your BPM is pretty important from the start, especially if you want to keep everything in time. So we have a little time control here. This is going to show us in rhythmic duration, so we can see the beats. If I double click this, or actually single click it, we can see the seconds. All right, so you can choose what sort of view you want there. If you're working with all loops and you're in the right sort of BPM range, actually looking at seconds is sometimes a little bit more helpful because all of this is going to be self-explanatory for you. This little icon here is something you've probably seen in other programs or DVD players, and that's a loop feature. So if I click that, let's watch this little yellow bar up here. That's going to light up. It means that our loop has been enabled. So if we want to just select a little 4-bar segment, we can drag over like so. I'll zoom in just a touch. And now we can play back just the loop. All right, so you can see that it would loop over again and again. That is super helpful when you are working on just a small beat or something and you need to hear it time and time again and you're making just small changes. So you'll use the loop all the time. We also have a fast forward and rewind button. Because Soundation is again in the internet browser, there are some times when trying to click around at the top can be rather difficult. And so let's say you're just trying to nail a snare roll or something and you keep playing it back. You don't want to have to keep looping around the whole way, but you want to just be able to keep going back and listening to that snare roll. So if I'm playing, I could keep going back or keep going forward. The play button, that's self-explanatory. We play, we stop. We play, we stop. But notice that the cursor pretty much pauses wherever we are in the timeline. It doesn't stop and go back to 0. The way we go back to 0 from the start is this first button here. The last thing I want to mention are our meters. Now, if I put this back to its default position by double clicking, let's look and see how hot these meters are down here. Okay, that's not really too bad at all, but let's go back to the other track that we had before. Let's add a new audio track here. We'll go in at 125 and see if we can find what we were using before. I think I've gone too far. There it is. I'll drag it, I'll drop it in. No. Let's watch the meters here for this clip. Okay, so that is way, way too high. And if I was to go in and add something additional to this, whatever it might be, let's just choose this synth stab. And we watch our meters. Now, personally, I feel like that synth stab actually has to be a bit louder. And so I'd have to go in here and turn this up even more. And if we're watching our meters, we can see that we're way too high. I would recommend keeping everything pretty much in green all the way through. Remember, you can always turn up your headphones or turn up your speakers, but what you can't do is fix digital distortion, digital clipping. So what I like to do is just kind of turn things down to 0 from the start, and then I'll often just kind of mix these up like so. Let's bring in our loop brace here. Get it so that it's just 2 bars. Great, now I can play back. Start to bring these up. And maybe we're even going a little too hot there, but that's kind of the example for you. Hope that's been helpful. If you have any additional questions about the transport controls, please feel free to ask.